If you could understand a single grain of wheat, you would die in wonder. Martin Luther. Wheat is not only one of the most important cereal grains on Earth, but one of the most important crops in general. The history of wheat begins over 10,000 years ago in the Near East, with experts not coming to a unified conclusion about the exact origin of its wild forms. The first evidence of wheat cultivation we have, however, comes to us from southeastern Anatolia and the northeastern Levant region, where about 10 millennia ago Neolithic farmers began farming a variety called einkorn, or Triticum monococcum. At the same time, the more historically referenced emmer wheat, or Triticum diacoccum, was being domesticated. Spelt and common bread wheat arose as a result of hybridization between emmer wheat and a wild grass in the area, Agelon's tauchi, which expanded wheat to have 6 sets of chromosomes, expanding the horizons of seed development and crop development from then onwards. From its cradle in the Middle East, wheat then spread, first to Greece, where it helped build the ancient powers that birthed the statesmen and philosophers of the Hellenic world, and continued spreading northwest until it reached England by sea, at least 5,900 BC, and Germany by land, and beyond as early as 5,000 BC, while wheat spread to the north of India, China, Iran, and many regions in a similar time frame. This dispersal is less well documented, and it's important to remember when reviewing archaeological and anthropological evidence that by the very nature of this specific discipline, the only evidence that is kept is the earliest evidence that is widely accepted by the scientific community. Wheat has influenced cultures in the Old World on a profound level, with the grain being cultivated for food, beverages, and even for the thatching of roofs, before written history began in many regions, with bread often being referred to as the staff of life in many historical pieces. Wheat's introduction to the USA and Canada occurred in the 17th century, and surprisingly, while wheat has been cultivated in Russia since well before this, it only gained economic importance in the 1860s. Since introduction, all 3 countries have come to dominate the market on this vital commodity. Wheat now has a multitude of varieties, with an important distinction between them being varieties broadly known as winter wheat and spring wheat, with the latter planted in the fall experiencing dormancy during the winter, and resuming growth in springtime to be harvested in the summer, and spring wheat being more conventional, as it is planted in the spring and harvested in the fall. While each have their advantages and disadvantages, winter wheat generally provides a crisper crust due to a lower protein content and is used for artisan bread flours, while spring wheat is better suited to all-purpose or cake flours. Naturally, this is a broad generalization, as there are hundreds of wheat varieties being grown in dozens of countries today, all with their own unique qualities, requirements, and optimal states of growth. Historically, wheat cultivation was clearly much more difficult than it is with modern farm power such as tractors, as well as integrated functional machines such as combine harvesters. Prior to the introduction of these tools, wheat planting and field preparation was done by hand, or using draft animals such as horses, oxen, water buffalo, or the now less relevant draft cattle, with many English heritage breeds, cattle being bred for triple utility, with milk, meat, and farm power in mind. Harvesting was done by a specialized scytheman called a cradler, named for the implement that clipped onto the tool called a grain cradle. It is said that a strong and able cradler could harvest 2 acres in a day, which included cutting the wheat, binding bundles, which included the stalks. A far cry from the 200 acres that a combine can cover in a day now. Threshing was also not a trivial task, with all wheat needing to be separated from the chaff or tares by beating it with a thresher, a sort of flail, in a specialized room that included a threshold to prevent the wheat from escaping said room. Once again, this is a task that is now done by a combine harvester, or, more recently, a McLeod harvester in some cases. After threshing, grains or wheat berries can be stored, sometimes for years, until they're milled, which could in and of itself be the subject of its own essay, as it has evolved drastically since the first time a millstone was spun against another, with different forms of power, levels of refinement, and processes being implemented over the centuries. Wheat has been the cornerstone of many great civilizations and continues to feed the world's population to this day, being known as one of the Big Three cereal grains due to its continued contribution on the world's diet. With many large swaths of Earth now being covered in no other species, there's no doubt that this grass from the Middle East has left an impact on human development and continued sustenance around the world.